I had found out about a specific gender discrimination happening that made it that I didn't get a job. So what happened was we talked to a race car team, and the idea was they wanted my husband like no one's business, and they could have handled me in a different role, but they did not want me as a race car engineer because the gender discrimination part was that they thought that I would mother the drivers and that I wouldn't be tough enough with them. Sooden. My job title is compassion and an empathy architect. So I help people get along. I uncover the gritty stickiness of people not getting along or people just being jerks to each other a little bit. My background is in mechanical engineering. I hold a bachelor's from the University of Calgary, and then I started motorcycle racing after winning motorcycle lessons at university. And that turned into a full-on obsession where I decided that I wanted to marry motorsports and my career.
My name is Laurie VandeSchoot, and I retired as Calgary's Deputy Fire Chief. I spent 32 years with the City of Calgary, and now I have this amazing opportunity to wander around the country talking to fire departments and police departments and emergency service agencies about their equity, diversity, and inclusion. And because I have a vision, and I have a vision that the fire service can be a fire service for all, where everyone belongs and everyone has a sense of belonging.
Females need to participate in motorsport because motorsport is a lot about problem solving, and having a full woman or full male team can close the doors on some problem solving opportunities that happen when you have two different brains, the way that they're wired, working together. Being a trackside engineer when you're working, so I worked with open wheel Formula cars, so being a trackside engineer, you get to the track, you're setting up kind of your engineering area in the pits, so you're setting up the network where all the data is being kept and a printer and all these things, and setting it up so that you can be next to your driver or drivers. And you walk around the track, so I had the pleasure of walking around some of the best tracks in Europe. Spa, Nürburgring, Le Mans, like all over the place. And so you look around and you do some visualizations with your drivers. So you're looking, is there extra bumps on the curb? What are your reference points going to be? Let's remember from last year. And then you get the setup done on the cars. And the next day is usually practice day, so you're planning out, well, how many brake pads do we need to bed in? How many sets of tires are we allowed to use with this specific series, because it's all a little bit different with the different series. And then you start executing your plan, and the next day is qualification, and hopefully you get some sleep and no one's crashed the cars because quality doesn't wait. So this is very different working in motorsports as opposed to my background in corporate land, because there's no wiggle room. There's not even 2 minutes worth of wiggle room. It's on. And then you have your race day, so you're talking about fuel strategies, tire strategies, team strategies as well. So maybe we have a team of 6 and 2 of them are looking for the championship. So you're looking at the other drivers, maybe they're really fast in one circuit, but you kind of have to tell them you're gonna have to cool your jets because we want to win a championship. So there's a lot of moving parts in trackside engineering. The adjustments that I used to make on different tracks would be elevation changes. So if we had a lot of elevation changes, maybe you're wanting a little bit more pitch on the car. If you're at a track like Monza that has a lot of straights. You're trying to straighten up your tires so you're getting less camber in them, you're getting less toe in them so that you can get the biggest straight line speed. But if you're at a circuit like Silverstone where you have a lot of fast turns, that's when you need a lot of wing, you need a lot of aerodynamic force as you're going through those fast turns to keep the car down. So it's very different setups depending on what the track is looking like, and the drivers. So we actually had 2 different setups for the same track because we had different drivers. Same with the gear ratios. So in 2008, 2009, I was working with Formula Renault 2-liter cars, and we had 3 different gearboxes to choose from. So we were racing in Pau in France, and we had drivers that had different gearboxes just because maybe they had an exit speed that was different, but their lap times weren't necessarily different. Yeah, it's interesting when I think about motorsports and what they can do to promote more equity. Think about the drivers and having to change. So when you're not in Formula One, you don't have your own trailer and your own fancy this and that. You're in the back of one of the 2 or 3 trucks that have come that don't have the mechanics working in them. And that's where kind of the drivers go. So I've worked with a couple of women drivers, and it's interesting to watch them navigate that.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget that our facilities and equipment are symbols of our culture. And so we don't sometimes think about how a single piece of equipment or a uniform or gear or tools might tell someone about the way we do things here. And so whether that's gloves that fit or porta potties on the racetrack, remembering that those things tell people whether or not you're included and whether or not you belong.
I dream of gloves that fit.
Right?
I don't think I've ever had a motorcycle glove that didn't have like 7 millimeters little floppy guy at the end, and that makes a difference.
Right.
When you're trying to control controls at over 200k an hour. Like it totally makes a difference. And a suit that would fit me.
Right. When thinking about whether or not parents are encouraging young girls to participate in sport, I recently read a study about how parents invest 6 times as much in sports equipment for boys than they do for girls. And so I think it stems from a lot of that. What are we willing to invest, right? And what are we willing to encourage our young girls to do, right? And how do we create those moments where young girls can try anything, right? A girl only needs one adult in their life to significantly change their entire course of direction, right? And so having that, whether it's that one mentor, and so having those people in your life who just blindly believe you can do it, right? And ideally, that's your parent, but it can be a teacher, it can be a coach, it can be a mentor.
Yeah. Actively finding mentors is something that I wish I knew when I was younger. That would have made my journey a lot smoother, probably. I was very lucky in the mentors that I got, but I was in my mid-30s by the time I went off to Europe.
I think another piece for me that I would encourage teams to really think about is what is the stereotypical representation of a race car driver, and what are you promoting out to the public? And so are we being intentional about showing different types of people, right? And even if it's only the 5%, representation matters. And so thinking about trying to break that stereotype about what is a race car driver, right? And who can be a race car driver. And so I think that really, being intentional about that, I think really also speaks to the culture, right? Yeah. Certainly language, the posters that we allow up in the pits, the kinds of policies we have, whether or not we have, anti-discrimination policies, whether we have anti-retaliation policies. I think there's a wide range. Are we providing training about how to be an active bystander, about how to be an ally? I think active bystandership is a fundamental tool that we should be teaching across the board, right? Whether we're talking about gender discrimination or any other type of discrimination that we see in our society. There's an interesting study that says that, so when people are asked, would you intervene in an actual situation? If you saw something happening, an incident of harassment or discrimination, would you intervene? And 2/3 of people say, 66% say, absolutely, I would intervene. But later, when asked if they actually intervened in a situation that they witnessed, whether it was seeing the drunk woman leaving the bar in an unsafe situation, or the moment of assault on the bus, only 1/3 of people actually intervened. And when asked why they didn't intervene, across the board, people say they didn't know what to do. I think it's not difficult to step in as an active bystander when you see an egregious act, right? I mean, if you walked in and you saw somebody, physically assaulting someone else, it's easy to step in, right? It's hard to step in when it's those little tiny microaggressions, right? Yep. When it's just those little right? Yep. Those are the hard ones.
And it's little, because people don't think, they're like, oh, here she goes nitpicking again. And I'm like, all right, let me show you what nitpicking looks like on the other side.
Totally. Yeah.
And let me open up your brain to look at it in a different way.
Right. I think the issue of reporting is very complicated. Yeah. And it's very complex, and it's very individual. I think that when you ask women why they didn't report, they don't want to be the girl with the cause. They just want to be part of the crew. They just want to do their jobs. I spent my entire career encouraging women to report, and when it was my turn, I didn't report. Because of all of those exact same reasons that all of those other women didn't want to risk it, right? And we have a habit of, when someone reports, we take them out of the situation, and so now they lose their job, they lose their friends, they lose their team, and so the perpetrator still gets to stay there, but we remove the woman, and we do that because we say it's going to be safe. Organizations that start to do this work right, initially it feels wrong because all of a sudden their statistics are going through the roof, right? Suddenly they're getting all of, we've had way more cases of sexual harassment. Yeah, it's because suddenly it's safe to report. It's not that anything changed. That's right. It's safe. There was a 10-year longitudinal study from 2019 to 2009, and so women in the fire service, whether or not they had experienced some sort of assault on the job, and so in 2009, 6% of women reported that they'd experienced some sort of assault, and in 2019, 5% of women. And so on one side, when I saw that study, I was so excited because I was like, oh wow, like it's going down. That's great. Then I took a step back and I went, no, that number should be 0. No woman should be assaulted at work. Yeah. This should be a safe place, right? And so, that's where I want to get to. Yeah. I want to get to a place where we don't need whistleblower programs because we treat each other well. We're treating each other with that kind of compassion.
So I was in a room full of guys. We were talking about racing, and they proceeded to talk about racers, and every time we talked about the situation for any given racer, the pronoun was he afterwards. So I was like, so we're talking about when we're going to grid up, the first guy gets off the line, and then it's going to be safer if he's able to do this chicane or that chicane, and then he. And I said, all right. I said, guys, this is a learning moment. And they're looking at me and they're like, okay. I said, I'm not going to tell you guys not to say guys, because that is many, many years ingrained into you. I understand that it's offensive for some people, so gently chip away at that. However, how many of you guys have nieces? How many of you guys have daughters? Hands up. So, as we're talking about racers, don't you think that your daughter, if she was sitting here in this room, thinks that she's not allowed to play in those reindeer games because those reindeer games are for him and he. And wouldn't it be weird if I started talking about everything I'm talking about in this race association and started saying she non-stop? It would give some head tilts for sure. So I said, more important than, I mean, we all know how to use the word them. We all know how to use the word racers. There's so many other words that we can use, but you are subliminally telling young girls that they are not part of this. I think girls drop out of sports for lack of support and for the message that you're just playing.
Right.
You know, it's not necessarily knowing that, no, this could be your career. Go for it.
Yeah, that socialization that, you have to be tender and nurturing. You can't be competitive and, aggressive. And, I think about those words that, when, some people call that girl bossy, and I think she has leadership skills, right? And so how we frame words with young girls and the kinds of behaviors that we encourage, right? And so, I think, the statistics tell us that young girls drop out of sports in junior high school, right? And so, certainly daily physical education makes a big difference if we encourage girls to continue that and expand the definition of sport, right? That, show me a high school that's teaching motorsports, right?
Yeah. What motorsports can do to encourage equality in the sport. There's so many ways. And when I first started into motorcycle racing, I laughed when they asked me if we wanted to do a women's class. Because I said, the bikes can't tell. But I had no idea the importance of it. And it did come down to the competitiveness, the safety aspect of motorsports. And that there are baby steps for some people that's your comfort zone. And it's maybe not that women aren't as competitive, because make no mistake, I know some smoking fast motorcycle racers that are women. And it's this safe place. And I think that's what was done. So when I was racing and I raced in my first women's race, I won it because I was the only one there. It was great. It was a great championship. One race, one win, done. No other girls came out racing that year. In other years they did. So I went off to Ontario and Quebec where there was a women's series. And it was fantastic.
I think the other thing for me, not necessarily what teams could do, but individuals in motorsports, one of the things that they can do, people enter motorsports because somebody told them about it. Right? We are recruited by friends and family. Somebody we know is in it. It's very rare for someone to just suddenly think of it without knowing someone in the business, right?
Yeah.
And so, go out and ask the women in your life to join, to jump in, right? And to think about coming out to the track, right?
Yeah.
And just give it a whirl, right? See if you like it. And I think sometimes it doesn't occur to us to ask the women in our life if they might be interested, right?
Yeah, when I was racing motorcycles, that's one thing that I often did was I would grab a bunch of the other female engineers at wherever I was working at the time, and I'm like, all right, I need some help, and this isn't going to be pit babes. You're going to have a wrench in your hand. You're going to be taking off my tire warmers, all these kind of things.
Very
and
cool.
It was an outing, right? So let you have a taste of what it's like being here, and maybe it'll inspire you to say, oh geez, you know what, maybe my passion is photography. I didn't even know that motorsports was this cool thing that I could
Nice.
fold it into. It was super fun.
Very cool.
Yeah. The best piece of advice that I was given in my career was, when things are tough and when things are hard, try to get perspective. And that was in the way that, in 5 years, is this gonna matter? And if the answer is yes, what can you do to control that? And if the answer is no, take a breath. and just enjoy life.
I really like that. 'Cause the best piece of advice I ever got in my career was to say yes, and to always say yes. Any opportunity that came up, say yes.
Yeah.
Even if it scares you, even if you don't know if you can do it.
Do it
say
scared.
yes. Right? Do it scared.
Do it scared.
So I really like that, that
Nice.
same notion, right? Yeah, that's good.
Geez, her.
Darn it. Darn you.
I'm trying to curb it.
What are you trying to say?
Well, I said that was a dick move, and that's
Oh.
kind of sexist.
Sorry.
That's
See, I didn't
super
hear the dick
sexist.
move.
Oh, let me highlight my filthy potty mouth that I'm just trying to keep. Wow.